So next that we're gonna learn is about logging. What is logging? Why we need it? And what are different types of loggings we there? With respect to Python, what are the different things that we can learn? In fact, first we will see what is the importance of logging. Without logging, is there anything that we can do? First of all, why we need to log the things? We can also use an ordinary print statements to get any outputs. Then how different would be logging? Let's take a very simple example. Logging. If I go here, if I want to get the output of something which is executing, so what I can do like a typical print statement. If I do like a print, hey, this is a print statement, then whatever it is executing, I can execute without any issues. So clear and Python. You see, this is a print statement. And the same print statement we can execute in a slightly different way. So I can do like a sys module. And using sys module also, we can do the same print statements. How to do? There are two ways using sys module. Sys.stdout.error. So sorry, stderror.write, stdout.write. In output, that is called as a console. Console, in generally every programming environment, you call it as a console. In console or the standard out, this is the output, okay? There are two types of streams. One is the output stream and error stream. Means when are you getting any kind of errors? Let's say I did like a 1/0. I get like that also messages. So as it is like a Linux environment, everything is coming like this. But if you go for like a Windows ID or like a PyCharm ID or something, you can see that whatever the error code is there, it will be in red color or like some other color to show distinction. So the point is like what I'm trying to say, the highlighted part is an error related thing. That's what is called as error string. So whatever is coming above is like ordinary output stream. So here when you have written std error, so error doesn't mean that it will be an error. That is coming from that error stream. So this is also coming from the error stream. So if you have an ID which has like a distinction, especially if you go for IDs, they will be distinguished. But as in a Linux environment, so here everything is like same, right? So that's why I don't see much. But the point I'm trying to say is that why we need these print statements or stdout. You want to see what is happening till that position. Debugging means what? You are passing the code and you are manually asking what is there. But without you asking, if you want to know what happens at that stage, you can use a print statements or stdout. Fine. Then what is the point of using a log file? First of all, log file, how do I create? If I say, hope you remember, if you want to create a log file, you can create a log file in this way. Say like, I don't want to create the files directly. Maybe here I want to create a folder and I want to create. So then what I will do, I can import like the OS module. So I can do like what you call os.makeDRS. Make DRS of. I want to create a folder called as logs. Hope you remember exit row equal to true. Means like whenever you are executing, for the first time, it will create the folder. And if the folder is already there, it will not do anything else further. Then you are creating a new file. You are doing .log. This is a new extension. And log file doesn't mean that it should be .log. You can have like any extension. It is like a plain text file without any kind of encoding. So whatever it is happening, we can do. And do you know till now, when you're opening a file, how do you write the content? You know, till now fh.write, right? So whenever you write a content, this is how you are writing. So this is a log line. This is how you write. This is a log line. And you specifically close it. Hope you remember. Instead of you doing these 3 steps, you are doing for a context manager, which can do the things. But still, if I execute it, if I say ls, did you see a log folder came? If I say ls logs folder, If I say it has thing, means cat log slash 00 so and so. Did you see this is a log line? This is what we know till now. But do you know that instead of doing like this, I can repeat the same thing with a print statement. It's very interesting to see. So I will not place it said. So I will do like this. So I have like this is a log line. The same content I place in a print statement. If I do like a print statement, what will happen? Till now, what we know, if I use a print statement, it will print that log in the output, right? With a print statement, if you want it to go to a file, then you can do like a file handler is equal to that file handler. And you remember, so whenever you're writing a file, you do like flush, right? Especially I told whenever you're doing a writing, it's a best practice to do the flush to ensure that all the content is gone. Similarly, the same thing we can write here, flush equal to true. So now you see the same thing happens again. So if I do like a cat of this file, you get it. If you have a doubt, let me do -rm-rf logs folder entirely. You can see now that there is no other folder. If I execute back it again, you can see the folder is there. And if I do like the cat of that file, did you see? Now in this program, you learned very interesting point that, so with print statements also, you can pass the content to a file. It doesn't mean that it should be log file only. It can be any text file. So without an encoding. And similarly, if you want to open the same file and subsequently if you want to do something, so what I'll do, I can do it again. So I can use the same clause, so these attributes as it is. So instead of these two statements, I replace it with this one. But I open in a write mode. And subsequently, if I say that I want to open in an append mode, so the same file, if you see, I have opened. So I think this is another file, right? Okay. This is another file called as append file .log. And I'm opening it as like this. Means, hope you know the difference. If I execute now, did you know that now in the log folder, there are two files, log and log append. In the log file, you have only one line, append also only one line. But if I execute again 2 times, did you see append function will append the content to the down? Whether you write with a print statement or with a, so fh.write, so whatever is the operations will be same. Okay, fine, sir. If you want to make all the content executions subsequently, whatever you do, say like I am writing some things, try exceptions and others. If I write like try exception and others, till now you have seen all these statements, right? Whatever happens, whatever you're doing, it is passing directly this one. Say you want to add a scenario where like whatever the user passes, let's say even there is a code broken. I do like a 1/0, everything. So error is there, code was broken, everything is there. So sorry, I will remove that. Sorry. If I do, the code is broken, right? If I say like 1/0, now what is happening? So whatever is there, it is printing. The error is also printing here. Now let me do a small redirection. Whatever is coming to the std out, if I want to redirect to something, if I say yeah, sys.std out is equal to file handler, you open the file handler here, right? So what is this file handler? Append file handler. For that file handler only, fh is there right now. Because earlier you opened, but you closed that file handler. Now with the same name, I opened with this append one. Now we see what will happen. So in the append file, already you did some operations. It has gone like this. But subsequently, see what will happen. If I execute again, nothing is coming in the output. If you observe carefully, whatever is there, everything has gone inside it. But did you see that only std out has gone inside? Did you see the errors? You know, this is also std out, right? This is an std error. So the code was broken, right? Code was broken. This is coming. But sir, if I want to redirect this std.error also, so I can say that to redirect. So error stream, you can do like this. Std error is equal to file handler. Now we see this time if I execute, so this error content is not coming here. So everything is going down. So these are the things which you don't find in other places outside. So most easily. And like, let's say I'm trying to close this content. File handler, I closed it. So whatever the file handler is there, till that only we can do anything. Say like I'm writing some statement. So will it not execute or it will execute? Let's see. If I have the file handler, what is happening? It is executing, but it will not come because the std out and std error are like redirected to file handler. But the file handler was closed. Then how can this will execute? So in fact, it is executing, but so executes, but won't print. So this is something very, very interesting. Next, going further about the true logging of why we need a logging, what kind of logging levels are there, all those things we can see now. Within the logging, if you see, there is a module called as logging. If I go for this logging module, if I print the dir of this logging, you can see that clear and Python 01 so and so. It has like a very good number of things, lot of attributes. We can do a sound good number of things. So first, till now what you understood, we can do an ordinary print statements. So instead of you doing that with an std out or std error, we can go for logs. Now we need to understand there is a concept called as log levels. Log levels. Sir, we know what is a print statement. Then what do you mean by this log level? Means log means what? It is writing to a file. When you're writing it to a file, there will be some kind of conditions you have. So levels of criticality of the things. Whenever user is telling something, say the code has entered a function 1, code has entered function 2, code has entered function 3. Let's say you are using Zoom as a tool. You are a consumer. Do you want to understand whether code has gone from one function to another to you? It makes no sense to you. So these debugging statements are suitable only for the developers, for the debugging purpose. Next level, you have something called as info. Standard thing, maybe like, so 10 people joined this call. So 2 people disconnected. So this is a typical log. It is good enough. And the next is like warning. Warning means it will not break the code, but it will tell a potential issue. Let's say the maximum limit for this Zoom call is say 100. Already 95 or 99 people joined. Then what I would say, warning, hey, you are getting to the limit. So either remove the people or ensure your limit is done. Or like, let's say you have memory exceeding. So if it is 100% exceeds, then it will crash. If it is like near 80% or 90%, it's like a warning to you, right? But the next two things are most important. If there is an error, okay, something happened, one of the thread missed, one of the person tried to join the Zoom, but suddenly it got problem. So those are errors. But in the errors also, there is something called as critical. What do you mean by critical means? It is one of the error, kind of a serious error. With that, nothing code is not running at all. Let's say you did something, the password was failed or expired or locked. Then what happens? No activity can be done. So like that it happens. These were the default, so different kinds of logs we have. And if I try to print these logs, same like an ordinary print statement, but we need to do logging.debug, logging.info, so warning, logging.trigger. Like this, we should specify. So in different languages, these levels are different. If I go for Node.js, it has like around 7 levels. If I go for like Python, we have like 5 levels. So there may be here and there difference in terms of languages, but overall every language have the same concept with slight things different. So these are the 5. Okay, sir, if I print this thing, what will happen? This print statement came, error stream, output stream both came. But when you are asking all these values, you gave 5. But how many you got? 3 only. But even these 3 also, you told this is a warning message. But what you got? You got warning, colon, root, colon, so and so. Means compared to an ordinary print statements, it is slightly different, right? It is following certain kind of syntax. Okay, that I understood. Maybe we will understand more about this syntax shortly. But sir, why I am not getting this info and debug? Now the point you need to understand is when a code is run. So let's say this Zoom application is there. It was delivered to every client. If let's say debug statements are there enabled. So if it is going from one function to another function, users are least bothered. But still you are generating. Then what will happen? So this application will be running your program. These logs will be very much humongous and it will occupy a lot of memory. So it is not a convenience thing, right? It is not a good best practice. And also if more memory is used, your system will become full. To avoid that, clients don't need during the production, so delivery, the debug messages. Even info message is also not needed for the client. Okay, 10 users or 5 users, let them join. So what will happen for the client? So that's the reason by default in production, the default logging level is set as warning. Now this concept comes, how to set this level and why they are setting. As I told you, when you go to the production, you don't need too much of noise, low level things to the client. So that's why only from warning onwards they set. But is it mandatory, sir? It's up to you for your application, how you want to design. If you want to set the level, there is a way. I will tell you shortly afterwards. But so if you set a level, from then onwards, everything above that will come. So if you should treat like, debugging is the smallest to critical is the highest. If you set any level, from that level onwards, anything above will come. If I set the level as info, from that onwards, everything above will come. So this is what you need to understand. So before thinking about setting that logging and configuration, I will tell in terms of the log parsing and log formatting. Till now, in terms of the log formatting, there are 2 ways. So you need to understand is, whenever you have a log, hope you remember this is like a old style formatting. You give the percentile placeholders and you give the values. Instead of you do the percentile like this individually, logs also support this kind of way where you do in a individually. You need not place this percentile and all these things. So generally on an ordinary print statements, if you do the same thing, what will happen? Observe the difference, you will understand. For a logs, if you give a formatting string and followed by this one, this old style formatting will happen. That's the reason it is saying it's the 5th error of polls application. It's not showing the percentiles. The same thing will happen if you don't have these braces also. Individually placed also it works. But if you do the same thing in an ordinary print statement, it doesn't work. If you want like this is the 5th application of the polls or so and so, you should explicitly do a percentile to get the things done, right? So you should do the explicitly this one percentile of the things to be done. So then it will work. Print of, say, if I gave this one, you see the same 2 things I gave, it is working perfectly, right? Just to give you an idea. Okay, hope it's clear. So if I do like a comma separated, then what will happen? It is showing like comma separated values as it is, right? So that is a different log and so and so. And also, as I told, for a logs, if you are trying to give the values like this, say, I'm giving individually these values and followed by 5 and so and so. So like this loosely I have given, right? So like that, if I give loosely here, so then it will gonna throw in error. If I do the same thing, So if I do, it will throw an error. Sir, why didn't throw an error here, but why it is throwing an error here? So the point is it has a placeholders, but you don't have a placeholders, but you gave it. Hope you understood. When things don't have placeholders, but you give, it will throw an error. So that is what you need to be aware. So this is an error. So type errors, all values are not converted. That's what it says. Next, so one more thing is in terms of the F strings. Typically, when you have like a new style formatting or F strings, both will work. But in terms of secure coding best practices, they say that don't use this kind of F strings when you're doing the formatting for the logs. They say that though it is bad, go with the traditional approach of passing individually. So this is one of the secure coding best practice. So let's say I have created one function and I have added some logic. As I told the story of SDLC, how it goes from dev, testing, staging, and like production. So I have a code, I have a debugging log. Now you see here, these many times the code will be executed, but you don't get the output because you didn't set the log level. Now, if I do the same example with a slight configuration. So if you want to set the log level or anything else, we need to know something called as logging configuration. In terms of logging configuration, there is a attribute called as basic config. Actually, they created this logging concept. So looking through the Java thing, right? That's why you could see some kind of Pascal casing or like camel casing in middle of the attributes. So basic config. So C is coming twice, you remember. There, if you set the level as level equal to debug. Now, if you see the same example, whatever I have written there, I'm writing. If I say clear and Python 02, yes, and Python 02. Okay. Did you see that the entire outputs are coming starting from debug? As I told, this is the order. If you set with minimum from there onwards, it will go. Did you see here small debug? This is capital debug, right? So this is called as flag. This is an attribute. So it's a method, right? That's a difference. And the same loggings you can do alternatively like this also. There is one more attribute, dot log. Then you can give explicitly the flag and do. Now tell me, do you want to do in this way simply, or you want to do explicitly like this? It is up to you to decide. As most of the people decide to go in the first way, that's why you are not seeing this anywhere. But in fact, when you do this logic, indirectly it will call like this only to the log method. Now, if I take the previous example of printing, say like I have the same addition function with a debug statement. Now you see how many times it is executing. You could see the same debug statement, right? Okay, you could see the debug, and this is the root. Root is the user or the application. So the default logger, I would say. And what is the log statement you give? Means apart from your print statement, some other things also will come. That is the beauty of logging. So next, now you understood how to set the log level. Then how to disable the logs. This is another important thing that you need to understand. In terms of logging, so till now we understood about how to set the log level. Let's say I set the level as debug and I have given the debug. If I say print of 03, you can see it is printing the debug statement. If you want to disable the logs, there are two ways. In Python 2 and 3, it is slightly different. So the first method is like this. In Python 2, we can do the disable by using sys.maxint. So means what you're trying to do. So by setting a maximum integer value, you are not taking any further value. That is what you did. But in Python 3, so we should use max size. If I do max size, then it will do. How do you check, sir, this one? So let me write this logic. If I write like this, what will happen? If I write the same old print statements, did you see nothing is coming? It doesn't mean that this function was not executed. It is executed, but the logs are not coming. Hope you understood now how it's working. Similarly, so there is another way. So a better way is using logger.disable. Instead of you setting a large value and making it complex, you can do it alternatively using logging.getLogger.disable is equal to true. So in this way also the same thing will happen. Now, sir, if I want to enable it again, so what I can do, let's say in the middle after 3 values, I want to do logging.set the state. Disabled earlier, I made true. Now I'm making false. If I do, the last 2 are coming to me. And subsequently, let's say if I do logging.info. So whatever the log level you have set, with respect to that only it will work. But this is how you can disable or enable the logs. Re-enable the logs. So next, after this, if I go a step ahead, what if you want to write these logs to a file? So till now you are writing the logs with a traditional way. I told you how to use the open file and do the things, right? But that is not the real way of doing. If you want to write the logs, typically logs will be with a .log file format and they were simple plain text. And if you want to set that, we need to use basic config. Hope you remember I showed you how to do the log level to be set. Apart from that, you can use the file name also. I'm following the same pattern. Instead of showing outside, I'm placing separately log files such that it will not mess with my actual Python code. So just to show you in a better way. So I use the same logs folder and I'm doing it. Now, when the file comes, then what is the mode? By default, it is append mode. But if you want every time new values, you can go for write mode. So generally, if you are going for ETL pipelines or something, you prefer to go with a write mode, but because you don't want the legacy changes. But if you are going for a production project where like a web app or REST API, you prefer to go for an append mode because you want to retain the history. So similarly, now if I give the values, as I said this, observe carefully. If I remove these two and if I try to print it, clear and Python 04, you could see everything is coming here in the console. The moment I wrote the file, if I execute it, it is not like disabled. It was redirected. You could see in the logs folder, there is one more log file, which is containing this one. And as I opened every time in a write mode, so you don't see like it was updating, but it is updating the existing file. So, and similarly, if I give like an append mode, so then it will try to add to the same values, as you know. Now, subsequently, if I give our code, some addition function, debug, something I have a log. First, you need to see the log level. Yes, debug is acceptable because it's a debug. So, and subsequently you have this output. Instead of coming here, it is going to this log. As the same statement executed twice. See here. So the previous changes were overwritten because of write mode. And what are the debug statements are coming here, right? So fine. After this, we have about logging configuration further. So with logging configuration, what else things we can do? If I go a step ahead about the logging configuration, within the logging configuration, there are good number of things we can do. So we can specify the log name, logger name, level name, path, file name, module, relative created, ASCII time, thread numbers, thread process name, all these things we can give. So typically, till now, what you know, these two things. So logging debug level. So, and like you are doing the file name and the mode. So if you don't give, it is an append mode. Then in terms of the log format, how you want the log to be, you can specify that information. Say earlier, these things were not there. Now I set it. So this is see the old style format. And sir, why this is message? Why can't you write Uday? So means it doesn't work. it has a predefined things. Every name has some meaning. If I say ASC means the time in a ASC as C time. You remember in the time module I told about C time. That C time module format and the level name. What is the log level name? And the name of the function or an object, and the corresponding what are the messages you pass. Now, as I gave the file name, it will place everything into that file. If I say Python 05 so and so, I got it. If I say now cat log slash, so what's the file name I give? 05. Did you see what's content coming? And I have commented this file mode. Means by default it's an append mode. If I execute again and if I ask the cat, did you see it was appended further, the content? And did you see how the content is coming? You are getting the date, so month, year, hours, so AM, PM. This is all the as C time format. But sir, if you want in a specific format, you can give. Within the as C format, if you want the date in a particular format, I gave it. Did you see percentile D means date? So capital B means like month with a words. So if I like years as a 4-digit year. So AM, PM, hours. So like months, minutes, seconds. So AM or PM, like that. So if you want a change, let's say small y, if I give, sorry. Let's say I have given small y instead of capital Y. Now if you see what will happen if I execute, it will execute. And if I say cat, did you see these years came like this? Small digits. So like that I can specify. And if I do like instead of capital I, if I say capital H, then there is no point of having AM, PM because 24 hours format, right? It will give perfectly. So if I execute, okay, I need to execute again. And if I ask this cat, did you see the format is changed instead of AM, PM? So like that, we can specify what's the format we want. Okay, this is all about the log format. So we need to set based on the logging level placed, logs are placed. If the specific is not present, log file will be created in the current directory of the script. If that folder is not there or something. Means if you don't specify a particular folder or log path. Next, after that, if you want to create a custom logging. So for the creating a custom logging file, so you understood about the logging and the basic configuration, what all things you want to give. Now, if I want to create like your own custom format, so in that case, you know these things. These are the basics. I have given like the format. So format I give ASC 15S. 15S means 15 digits. So you need to reserve for the string. And client IP. What is this name? This is a new one. So name you know, user you know, message you know. What is this client IP? You don't know, right? So we need to give that values. So what are the client IPs there? User flags are there. You have given. Now instead of just logging something, you need to do along with that with an extra. Extra is an attribute which will take a dictionary. If you pass those things along with your content, it will come. That's the reason when you are working with any application, you will get application specific certain data. So to get that application specific data, you can go. Now, if you see in the format, you are getting the IP address. As I didn't give the file name, it's not going to the file, but you are getting whatever you want. Similarly, within the basic config also we can do. So the same basic format. So I gave the file name now. So what are the conversation from now onwards will follow this one. So I gave the date and everything. So logging.date, format, everything. And apart from that, I gave extras. So within this, I didn't write the client name. So it works perfectly. So if I execute now, there is one more way. Instead of just doing a login, we can create multiple loggers. So next you will see these things only. So instead of, let's say you have a big project. In the project, there are like multiple microservices. When logs are coming, instead of placing that every time all log are present and you are storing somewhere, you can segregate the logs by a logger object. Say like I have a TCP server, that logging I gave. So I gave like something. For that, I did a percentile s. Percentile s means subsequently you should have that value, which is a string means. And apart from that, I gave extras. Now, if you see here, you will understand. I got the output. And did you see that how it is working? You have set these logger objects with respect to each of these logger objects you are doing. But you see, you gave that extra like D. And did you see in the output? And for all these things where you did the set level, first you did the set level here for the logging object, for a typical logger. For this logging, you gave the set level. So whatever you have given here is working only for it. So, but for others, it is following this one, extra values. So whatever you get, you got it right. And on top, did you see, as I created a custom logger, did you see instead of a root, I got like TCP logger, my app, so and so. Means if you don't give a logger, till now the root logger is working. But if you give a specific logger, it will work. And not only this, within the logging, we can do further more great interesting things. Means there is something called as logging.exception. Generally, when you get a error till now, there are two ways of getting the errors. Say I have written a log file. I gave the file name, append mode, and everything. Say I have written some logic. So here, if you see, you did a for loop. Within that logic, you are doing a try exception. Within this try, I am doing some logic which will fail for some use cases. I can do a typical print. When you do a print, what will happen? Let's say I am commenting these things. Okay, let me comment these things. If I do a typical print, what will happen? If I say clear and Python 07, whatever the error message is there, you are getting in the output. But if you just see the error message, how can you know what type of error it is? You don't know. So that's why instead of it just EX, you do REPR. REPR is the raw representation of the string. So if you do like this, instead of just giving the log, it will give what type of it, type error, and what is the error message. This way it will be much more clear for you to handle it. Now let's say I'm going for the logging dot, so error. Same like EX, in the same scenario, without the error exception message type, it will do that. And it will not show in the output. I need to go to this particular message. Within the logs, I need to go for the 7. Did you see? It is just storing the error message. But we don't know like why it is storing. So we need to understand that. So how to understand? So within the code, instead of just error, we can do like, so like this REPR of this one. If I do REPR of that, the advantage is I am getting the error log of not only the error message, but the type also. Now it is better, right? So instead of you doing these two, there is a third one called as error dot exception you give, and exception info equal to true. So whenever something was broken, as you are doing a try exception, means instead of breaking the code, it is going there. But if you want the error stack also, we need to say exception info equal to true. If I do right now, did you see what happened? It is not just showing the error, but also where the error occurred, when they occurred. Did you see when a code was broken, this is what happens, right? So that is the beauty of going for error. Instead of you doing these two things, there is the next thing called as exception. If you do logging.exception also, it will does the same thing. If I clear the screen and if I say Python 07, so did you see that what will happen? So the same statement is happening. Now, what is recommended, sir? It is every time recommended to use either error or with exception info or like exception. Because for post-mortem analysis, they will, if there some production issue happens, they will not tell to re-execute again. It will be very costly to re-execute and store the content. That's why when you're creating a logging, it should be post-mortem ready. Post-mortem ready means what? When something happened, you cannot save it. It was already done. You are analyzing why it happened. For that, it would be very much useful. So this is what about the. Similarly, if I go for one of the examples, where a typical example, say I want to show the disk usage. For that, I want to create a small program. So just to mimic a practicality, I'm doing like this. Did you see that here I did a alias import? Means logging, I felt like a very big name. So that's why I did like LG. So when you're calling also, we need to call with respect to that. This is how we can do alias. There is nothing wrong. It's up to you. But ensure that there is no variable with the same name. Then it would be confusing and it will override the variable name. So that we should be careful about. So I gave a log, so format and everything. I took a particular thing. So you will take the input in the runtime. Based upon the input, it will try to do. If the size is greater than 100, it will say critical. Between these two, it will do like this. Now, let me take like this example. I clear the screen. Say Python 08. I want to execute this file. Okay. If I execute, it is asking the numbers. If I say 23. So it is not showing the output here. It is going to the log file. If I go here to the log file, you will understand. It is giving based on the format. So if I do again, if I say like 34, see what happened? If I give like 45, it is showing. If I do like 56, it is showing debug. If I do like 67, it is showing like debug. If I say 78, it is saying warning. See, it is increasing capacity. If I say 89, did you see it is saying error? So it means it's failing the things. And if I say 99, it's saying like error. If I say like 100, it is critical. So I hope you understood how the logs are made. So it is not like a super good example, just a example for you to understand and apply your criticality in real time. Okay, and there will be one good edge case. Sometimes when you're logging, we have a very big output that you want to log. So typically, if you do logging in a traditional way, things will not work. Let's take the example. Say, I have a big content. I have a big content. Generally, when you have content like this, crazy. If I do like an ordinary print, what will happen? So if I say print 09, so and so, the entire content is coming like this. So it is good enough now. Assume that you are in a production support. Suddenly a big log came. You need to analyze. You need to go to the entire log and copy that log to an ordinary notepad and analyze. It will take quite some time, right? If it is one line, okay. What if there are 10 lines like that? So every time it would be crazy for you during a production analysis. On top of that, you know how much pressure will be there during the production process. So then instead of an ordinary print, so hope you know there is something called as p print and pp. I remember I told you. If I use p print, what will happen? Instead of getting all these things in a single line, you get in a better way. So this is what you know till now. In the same logic, if I apply to these files, and if I do with a logging.info, logging.debug, and all these things, if I want like a p print for this log, so instead of logging the entire content in a single line, I want in a better way. So what if I do the same thing? Logging.info of the same data. So if I do now, if I execute right now, you can see this content is coming, but I already have this here as a 9 logging.log file. So if I see here in the log file, everything is coming, but it is crazily big to read it. But if you want, there is one more option within the p print called as p format. So using p format, what we do is like, so whatever the content that you have, you need to do pprint.p format, right? Using p format, you pass your content data. So if I do like a direct p print of this data, will it get it? So let's say I have logging.info of this data. I'm passing this entire content to this p format. So will it solve my problem? Let me see. If I execute, this output is coming in the log file. So I think this is the log file. Did you see what are the content is coming like this? So logging, the entire content is coming. So your problem was solved, right? Instead of doing in one line, you are doing like this. Or if you want to do this in an explicit way, so like that also you can do, where instead of like this, you can write. Means in p format of data, you pass it with the split lines and you do individual logging. If I do right now, again, you can notice in an ordinary way how it is working, as you did every time in write mode. So it is working like this. If you do all with P format of this entire content, you are getting like this. But you can go to each of the loop of line and do like that also you can do. Whichever works for you, you can take it. So both are fine. These are all subject to things. You can take your own choice. Next, after this, for this particular configuration, in real time, what happens is like, especially if you go for like Django or Flask, these kind of projects. So they will not do the logging configurations and everything in this way. So generally, they try to get the log configuration from a dictionary or a JSON, which is outside or something. If you want, let's say, a dict log configuration, you can write like this. So it is a typical production logging example. You can see disable existing loggers. So in a project, when you are working, there can be different loggers. When you have imported one module, that module also may have one logger. Like that, different loggers will be there. And what is the version? What is the format? What are the handlers? So I told about the console, right? To come in the output. So that is called as stream handler. Stream output or error stream handler is console handler. Similarly, another thing is called as file handler, like that HTTP handler. There are different such handlers will be there. So you are specifying what logins you want, how do you propagate, and all these things. So till now you do logging dot, so basic config. Now these things are, configuration, logging dot config dot dict config, or you give the dictionary. So typical till now you have given an ordinary thing. Assume that I'm commenting this. So then what will happen? As no file is there, nothing is coming. Whatever is coming, it will come directly. If I say clear, you can see in the output, because the default log level is warning, right? So that's why everything will come from that level onwards. But if I enable the same thing, now if you see Python, the same 10 so and so, did you see you got in a particular format? How it is getting all this information? Because of here. What handlers you want? You want only console. That's why you got only console. And within that, what is the default level that you want to set? So info. From info onwards, you are getting all the things. So info, critical, so and so. And what is the format and others. And here in the loggers, you have set the level as error in the console. So here you did like info and here you did like error. So that's why you took the error for the logger. That's why you got from error onwards. Okay, this is one real example I brought from that configuration so that you will understand how it works in production projects. So next, not only this, you can also have a logging configuration separately. Hope you remember. So yesterday I showed about the config files. So like that, we can create a config file, logging.conf. So .conf file, .ini file, .cfg file, anything we can specify. So the names are different, but the concept is same. Everything will have a section. Within that section, you have key values. You specified what are the loggers. So root and simple example, and you have specified the handlers, console handler. So formatting, simple formatting. So like logger root, so console handler, simple example. Did you see I gave in a specific format, logger underscore sample example. So I have two loggers, right? For the sample example, what is the thing? For the console handler, what is the different thing? Arguments for the simple handler, and for the simple handler, so what is the formatting? So everything is like a very pretty much interesting. Now you wrote like this, then how do you use it in terms of usage means? If I take the same example, so with the same name I will do such that you can better relate. .py. Now in this file I want to use that. So I want to get the file of the configuration which is in the current directory of this particular file. I can just tell, hey, go and get in the current directory. So I can specifically tell that, hey, so go into the current file path and get to this like 11. So logging.conf. If I do like 11 config.conf and I give this particular things, if I give a typical log file, So if you see clear and Python 11 so and so, did you see you got a pretty good format? So why it happening? So because of its passing. That log file, it has gone in the current directory and it did. Instead of you doing directly, you can also give in a very strategic way. So in production, they don't try to hard code. That is not a good idea. So the best way is like to do in an indirect way. So what we do? So first you try to get the current directory of your current file. If you know underscore underscore file is the metadata for any file to get the file path of the file. So from that you get the absolute path, and for that path you are trying to get the directory, means you are trying to get the current directory. So of this file, wherever it is located. So why you are doing like this, sir? Why can't you get os dot get current directory? Means like the file may be working somewhere, the current directory may be somewhere. Sometimes we will import the context and all these things. So you don't want to mess up everywhere. Wherever this file is there, I want to do logs like that only. So in that use case, I can take the current directory and check like this. So it is up to you if you want to go with os.get current working directory. So wherever the current directory is there in that program, it will execute there. But see here, you gave a default logs, simple logs for how it is working. So for this is a root logger. Because you didn't specify any logging, you did like a basic logging, it will go with the root logger. For root logger, what all things are there? As highlighted, you get everything. So debug is the minimum thing. That's why you got from debug onwards everything. And also the naming is also very much interesting. You should go in that lines only. And subsequently, for this logger, if I do set something, say I created my own custom logger. When I'm creating a custom logger, I told this is how you create a logger. Logging.getLogger of some name. The same name should be there in the logging basic config. If I do, so simple is also there in the loggers. So for this logger, what is the details? And for these things, console logger it showed. So that's the reason if you see now examples, you are getting the content like this. No? So the moment, so this logger came, so the story became changed completely. So the previous examples and these examples both have changed it. If I do, you see, the previous one and this one, everything changed. So that is why they say that in a given code, it is not recommended to use both kinds of things. If you go in production projects, if you're writing like a single script for like ETL jobs or cleansing or anything, you go with a basic logging. But if you go for any project, so like a REST API or web app, you create a custom loggers only. So if I say like I have something called as Gudo one resume, I wrote like another thing. If I execute, I will get my executions. So whatever I have given, I'll get it. So it is not following this because here we didn't specify for this Gudo one resume logger. So like that it works. So next thing is you till now did about this streaming logging. So if I explicitly want to create a logger and I want to work in detail with that logger object. So till now you understood what is a stream logging, right? So now I want to work. So the process is very simple. If you want to create a streaming logger or any logger for that matter, first we need to create the handler and we need to have the configuration. And then for that you create a log object and add that configuration and you do it. So first I want to create a handler. So in production, how it works, I will tell you. Till now, what's happening? You do a basic config, everything you place, or like a config file, place everything in that. Now, in production projects, how it works? You create a stream logger, and for that logger, you set a level. And for that logger, you need to have a formatting also. To get like the formatting, you can create a formatter separately, and you can do. So logging also has an attribute called as formatter. So you can do. It may look strange for you because in basic config, everything you read in a single place, right? But now you are adding separately. So for all these things you did for what? This console handler. Now, console handler is there. But if there is no logger, nothing will happen. I hope you remember we created a custom logger. I give what are the name. For this custom logger, we need to set the level. See, for this handler also you set a level. For logger also you need to set a level. Why, sir? Within a logger, there can be multiple handlers. So this is one handler. So next I will tell about the file handler and others also. So now we need to add this, so handler to this logger. So initially it may be confusing, but simply think like that. If you want to like do some kind of long journey, then what we will do? We will make everything packaged. So in your bags, and then you place onto your car and you ride your car, right? In the same fashion, you are creating the packaging first and you are doing all the things, and then you make your car ready and place your luggage into your car. It's kind of an analogy. And then you execute or you drive. I give these things now, it will work. Clear and Python 02 so and so. As I gave a stream handler, so stream handler means you do it. So by default, it works like that. If I go to the stream handler, this is how it works. Fine. After the stream handler, what are is coming? What are the format you give? It is coming. So this is what you understood about a stream handler. So then, sir, what is the other thing? If I want to create a custom handler like this, say now you understood about a bit of stream handler, right? So I will give one example of it. This is also production code actually. So when you are learning about the classes, you can come back and see. I have created a custom logger object. In Python 2, you do like this object, but in Python 3, you don't need. You can just write like this, loggable. And I have created a custom logger. Every logger will have a class. It's called as constructor. And you get some methods and others. See, I did like a logger object. I did see another thing called as file handler. So I did a log warning, means a custom messages I have written. Like this, I can create my own custom logger. But did you see that I have written a file handler? So here I am passing this logic entirely and I'm executing. So custom class I'm creating. So I'm giving some log2.txt. Log doesn't mean that it should be in log.log file. It can give like this also. But here I have mentioned like a log handler instead of a stream handler. So if you see, it will go into the current directory because I didn't give the explicit file path. So in the explicitly, it will do here the entire logging. So now we understood a bit of logging, but so subsequently next chapter is object-oriented programming. When you have done that, you can come back and see through this one. So after this custom thing, so let me go for this file handler to make you understand further more better. Within the file handler, if I say, again, the process is same. You need to create a package of your luggage, create the car, and add to that and doing the same process. So I created a file handler. Unlike the stream handler, file handler expects a file name. And it don't expect a mode, but default mode is append. And it also has a formatting. It also has a level. But interestingly, did you see that here you didn't specify the level? So it is not mandatory to set a level for a handler. So when you want to set a level for a handler means, let's say from the same place, same code is executing and giving output in the console and also in the file. In file, if you want to set like a debug level, so that everything you want to store. But in the console, you want only from error onwards. So like that you can specify. But whatever is the logger object log, so everything will be below that only. So here I created a logger object, and for that I added this handler. Then if I do the log message, it will execute. So if I say Python 13a, executing it. Subsequently, I did a basic config and I'm asking. So logger object, if I give, and I'm doing this custom logger object, and I'm doing a log message. The same message I am doing in this way also. Whatever is coming in the basic config, it's coming directly, but others it's not coming. Hope you remember previously we saw an issue where custom logger and main logger both are there, then it will mess the entire story. So instead of messing like that, if you create like this in a particular way, so in the same function, same code, you can have both the things without disturbing one another. So one more example for the same file handler to give for you is that within the file handlers, we can execute this code by giving this entire context. Say same thing I did. I defined the handler, I added the format, and I set the level. Set format of this format. Then the logger object I gave and handle, and I'm giving the outputs. The same example, but in a showing like this. Logger dot so and so or logging dot so and so. Observe carefully, I'm using logging, but I didn't do a basic config, right? Now, if you see in this example, clear and Python 13b. Did you see what happened? So whatever you had did logging dot directly, those came in the output. And for that, if you don't give a basic config, the default settings will be there. Those we will be getting. But whatever you place it for the logger, they will go to this logging dot 14 logging dot py. So whatever it goes, it will go there. Next, subsequently, if I go for the next one, so this is more important. In real time, you will see these kind of logs a lot of time, where you are using multiple loggers. So till now, you have seen the concept of using a single logger, but I will tell you the concept of multiple loggers. This is a simple story to understand the path of the file and generate the file. This is very interesting. So I will not explain, but you can just go through. Whatever the file name is there. So today the file name is 14 multiple handlers.py. Tomorrow it name may be different else. Something. Whichever the code is executing, if you want its name to be done, so you can use this kind of way. It will take the file name of the current file, the entire path name, and in the same directory, it will create with the same file name instead of a .py with a .log. So this is very intelligent code. Whenever I write in utilities in my code and I import, whenever I'm creating a logger. So and simple things. The formatting is same. File handler, for file handler, I set it. See here, I set the format. So I gave the format, right? That format I'm setting to the file handler, and level also I'm setting. Similarly, for stream handler, I'm saying stream equal to sys.out. So I'm not exclusively telling sys.out, not st.error. But default is also sys.output only. You set the things. And now you created a logger. In the logger name also, I'm not giving anything. Whatever is the current module is there, the name also will be like that. So like that, this is also dynamic, and this name is also dynamic. Everything is dynamic. And if I do like a set level, that also sets. Now in the output, you can see I added both the handlers. Observe carefully. For the logger, you have set the level as debug, which is a bare minimum. Everything should come. In the stream handler, you didn't set anything, but you added the stream handler here. Then what will happen? Whatever is the logger level, the same thing will get to the stream one. Means in the output, you should see from the debug onwards. But for the file handler, you told from error onwards. Means from error level onwards, it will go to the file. So now you added only these logger objects to make it clear. So if I say clear and Python 14 so and so, did you see now a new file will be created where in this directory, wherever we have, you see multiple handlers. It is generating the content, and observe carefully in the output, which is the stream handler, you got from debug onwards. Whereas here you got from error onwards. Why? Because that is how you can manage. Here you set the log file handler as error, and you read like this here. And also here the file handler, you didn't mention that mode. The default mode is append mode. If I execute again, you can see entire content like this. But here, the append mode, the new content is coming. So like that, we can have multiple handlers. So within the same things. And last thing, in terms of advanced logging. So if I go for like one more example, this is, sorry, this is also one kind of production So project thing only. I borrowed from another project. You see, I am writing. So here the logging is very interesting. I have created an automation script which can run in any platform. Based upon the platform, it will go and set the log level in a particular place. See what I did? Sys.platform equal to Linux. Means if you go for Debian or like Ubuntu, all those things. So Linux 2 means like CentOS, Red Hat, and all these things. If any of these things, go to this path. If it is Windows, go to this path. And if it is Darwin, go to this path I give. So if it is an unhandled platform, I am doing an exit. So this is a very interesting thing, right? So depending upon the use case that you are going through, I am planning to create a script which can run in any of the platform because I am working on a particular automation project at the time. So I used it. Similarly, if I go further in the same fashion, instead of, I think you understood the overall context. See, it is very dynamic enough. It is taking the current time as the folder name and it is doing it. So if I execute this file, say clear and Python 15 so and so. So what it is saying, permission denied. You don't have a permissions to work on this particular folder. So you should have the permissions there. So maybe like how I can do. So chmod plus x 15 so and so. If I give, will it increase the permissions? If I execute it, it is saying that your file is executable, but you need to have a permission on that particular folder. Maybe you take that example. So how to grade the permissions from here to there? You need to run like a system user if you want to store in the user. So like a sudo. If you know in Linux we have sudo commands. Sudo su means like a super user you need to do, or like you need to have the permissions to access that folder. Similarly, if I want to get the logs but in a different format, generally there is another thing called as loggings JSON. If you want the logs to be in a JSON format, but sir, who will be interested in a JSON format? Because most of the production projects, they don't store the logs directly. They will pass to a third-party tool like a Splunk or Sumologic or like a Sentry or any kind of logging tools we will have. For them, so the tools will accept like a JSON format or something. For that, if you want to create a custom JSON, we can create a custom class where we can specify the attributes. Hope you remember these attributes you might have seen somewhere else. These are the basic attributes of the basic config, right? Those attributes to JSON I wrote, and I am doing like a dot format is a one method I wrote. So take all the attributes and do like this object. From the user, get attribute. For a given record, you are trying to get all these attributes and you are creating like a dictionary and doing a JSON.dumps. Means whatever is there, it will dump to this object with this kind of indentation. Now, if I say like a file console handler, like this, I created a JSON handler formatter. So handlers are there. Earlier formatting means you have some kind of formatting. Now I did like a JSON formatting. So ordinary class, it has these attributes and just a format method. That's it. So dot formatter equal to this formatting method. So and I'm writing with a .json file. So whatever I'm doing, I'm creating a logger, adding a console handler and file handler. Observe carefully. Console handler is there. For that, it has a JSON formatter. So file handler is there. For that also JSON formatter. And I'm adding the content. Now, if I say Python, so 16, so and so, you can notice that the entire content is coming like this, right? Observe, this is all one message, means one line. One line you are saying like critical message. It has all these attributes. Sir, why all these attributes are coming? Because in the attribute to JSON, you mentioned them. If you don't want some of them, you can remove that. But it will create like this. See, entire JSON. So created it, file name, so function name, so level, so what is the line number, so module, so how many milliseconds it took for getting it. So for all this information, it is giving. So these are needed when you are going for a third-party connectivity. Hope you understood how to create a JSON file. I think I forgot to show the same thing in a log file, right? In the logs also, you can create another file. Did you see the content is coming entirely? And observe carefully. So it is saying like the end of file is expected. It is not coming in a proper format. So I think that bug you can fix. It's a simple. So placing everything in a list of place, but it will go create like this. Okay. Next, sir, is there any better way to do the same kind of one for this logging of the JSONs? Yes, there is one more thing for the logging JSON. So like this one, there is one more JSON. Yeah, format in JSON. So for formatting in JSON, there is one more module. There is a third-party module basically for formatting to JSON that is using a built-in, it's a third-party module called as Python JSON logger. If you want to use it, you can use, but be careful. So these days, what's happening? There are some modules which are coming with the popular names, but they are masquerading modules, means they will steal your tokens. So Python malicious, so modules, if you type malicious Python modules, you can see that. So there are these days, this is one of the targeting attack where they are making a name which is similar to the popular module name and then trying to do the attacks. If you go for see here, they seem to be legitimate, but they were doing. What they're actually doing is when you install that module, when you are running it, it will get the environment variables and they will pass on those to a remote servers. So that's why they say be careful about that. Check whether that particular module is being used by multiple people. How many stars are there for it? Let's say this Python module I want to use. Someone has recommended. Then go to this JSON PyPy package. In PyPy package, you can see the statistics. How many stars are there, forks are there, and others. If you want to go details, go to the home page. In that home page, you can see 1.6. And in terms of activities, how many people are using? When is the last release? So when is the last file submitted? So last year. Not very much active. So it is a old module. So now more people are not contributing. So like this, you can understand an idea whether to go with a module or not. So you should take the decision like that. So if you are installing, as it is already installed, just now installed, it worked. So Python, if I want to work with this 16, so logging in JSON format. Okay, if I execute it, did you see? I did like a stream handler. Instead of a JSON formatter in the previous, I did like this. So JSON logger is a Python JSON logger, import JSON logger. I did it. So I showed you both ways. If you want just like this, that is also one way. If you write your custom class, that also I showed you. That is also an interesting way. And similarly, I think now the last important things in terms of rotations and this one, these are most important just for your understanding. This is something called as logger object. So as logging is like very crucial, you need to learn a very interesting things here. Within the logging, if you want to rotate the logs, sir, what do you mean by rotating the logs? Till now, you know what is the name of the file, what is the basic config, all these things, fine. There is something called as handlers. In the handler, so you have given something like a rotating logging handler. Observe carefully. So within the handler, you gave like this. In that, you gave a file name, same like an ordinary file handler, this is, but it also expects the maximum bytes and backup count. What is this, sir? Or if you want to do explicitly also, we can do. You create a logger object, you add the rotating file handler instead of an ordinary file handler. You give the maximum size and the backup count. I am doing for the 50 times using the built-in logging, unlike my custom logger. I am sleeping each time for 3 seconds just to execute it multiple times. Now, if you see what will happen, Python 17 logger. So basically, it is not coming the output in here, but it is creating the outputs in this folder. If you observe carefully, it is creating a file. What is the file name? So it is under the logs. It is creating with the same name, 17 logger, right? No, it is creating with something else. Okay. So where is this? Yeah, it is creating here itself. If you observe carefully, yes, it will understand. The code is executing, but it took like a backup. Means first it will create a file. It will add all the content to that. But at one point, that maximum size will be increasing. Then it will create like a backup. Did you see that the first values are coming here? And did you see it became log.2? So earlier it was log.1. It became log.2. And then it will become log.1. So as it is a file, you can see every time, see here, whenever it is generating new values, the previous backup is gone. It is maximum maintaining 2 backups, log.1, log.2. Each one with the maximum size is given. Did you see in the log2, what is the minimum value now? 12. It is still executing. See at one point, see what happens. The previous file was gone. The latest content is coming. Let's say if you have like a very big log coming, you don't want to store the old logs. You can give a size maximum such that in each file, the size will be maximum that much. If I go for ls-l, I think still it is executing. So that program is executing. I intentionally want to stop just to show you. So for each of the files, it will have this one. If I say ls-l star.log in the current directory, you can see that. In the current directory, what are the files are there and their sizes. So ls-ltr, if I say, you see here, you have like 17 rotation logs. So here you have logs. Okay. So log dot star, if I say, did you see? Each of the files, what is the maximum size? And here in the file, you have given that size. Means till that size, it will write to the one file and subsequently it is regenerating. If you want to see the status of this code again, if I can delete these things. So delete these files, delete it. So log and so, I created it. And I have this my code. What I'm doing for 50 times. Continuously logs will be added to it. Now, if we see what will happen, both are not coming in the console. So I need not worry. I can clear and Python 17 logs. See, for the first time it is adding. The content will be adding 1, 2, 3, 4. As it is a file system, right? It will take a less refresh rate. So it will not update very fast. But it is doing in the backend. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like that it will create. And once it is done, did you see? After the size was reached, it is taking the backup of the existing content. And that log main file will have only current content. So if you see further, it is adding and is creating like that. So this is all about the disk logger. So what say rotating file handler. Similarly, there is one more thing called as time logger. So time-based logging. If you want to know, there is one more thing called as time-based logging. So where you give a specific time and interval, till that interval it will be working and it will create a backup for another thing. If I want to stop that and do execute Python 18 so and so. If you see here, I created a rotating handler and in this you to say rotating. You gave a sequence, means for this many seconds, means for every 5 seconds, you want to add the things and you are doing 5 backup counts. Means when it is executing, for every 5 seconds, it will create a backup. So if you see here, so it is creating for everything. As I showed you, it is creating a backup for every 5 seconds. So because here you have given that information, like, hey, create a log file. So for every how much we need to do backup, at what stage you want to do. So I have given like this, but there will not be anyone who is foolish to create for every 5 seconds, but like for every day or like every day you want to take a backup, like that you do. It depends upon the application that you have, how frequency of data you have, how much data you are generating, all these things. So whatever the interval you give, for that interval, it will start generating. If you see for EVSC, for everything, there is a 5-second gap. So like that in reality, if you give like 1 day, for every 1 day, it will create it. So the program will be executing continuously, application. So it will create like the backups. Like that, how many backups you want to retain, you can specify that. So every time in the log, you are seeing the data, right? Current data. The previous data was backed off like this. So like this, you can create a backup for the things like a rotating file handler or time-based logging. And the next thing is using memory handler. If you want to use it within the loggings, the one last thing is about memory file handler. Memory handler means like whenever you have some content, for that you can add like memory handlers. Means till now you know what is formatting. You did a set level, log level, you are doing formatting. And now I'm showing a new handler. So you know stream handler, this handler, and now is a memory handler. In the memory handler, you specified the capacity and like the flush level, from which level onwards you want it, and the target stream. I want like the stream handler, which was already created. Means it is also stream handler only, but it will have some capacity. So, and you gave like 1 KB as the thing, because 1024 into 1 means 1 KB. So now you created one more thing called as file handler and set the level. And now you created a logger object. For that logger object, you added both the things. So memory handler is indirectly created with this stream handler only. So we have a stream handler with a memory handler and a file handler separately without any concerns. So you are adding this content and you are doing memory handler dot flush. So when you're doing a flush and you did what? At exit of flush means when you are exiting the program, you want to stop it. So, I told you about this at exit module. Whenever you're registering any function at exit, so it will be executed at the end of the program when you are breaking the code. So you see here, you have written a while loop where you are looping for these many times. It is how much times? 1 lakh times, right? So 1 lakh times you are looping. And you are every time doing a logging, debug, and all these things. You set a level as debugging, right? Fine. Now you want to run this program. So how it will work? Generally, it's not a good practice to do this thing for everything. Whenever you want to scavenging code or like for a post-mortem analysis, you do it. So if I execute, what will happen? Everything is coming, right? Continuously. So whatever the log codes are there, as it is in a while loop continuously, I'm getting. Similarly, I have a file handler. So file handler with the same name, right? Within the logs with the same name, 19 so and so. Let me show that. So within that, I have a log file. There also it is coming. But did you see that the entire content is coming continuously? So all log levels are coming, everything, log 1, 2, 3, so and so, fine. Now, at one point, I want to break the code. I do Control C. If I do Control C, so the code will be broken. Did you see till now, whenever you do Control C, what will happen? It will break the code. That is the last statements. But after breaking the code also, you can see something. So in the file logger, you don't see anything like keyboard error or after some things what happened. But only as you have a memory handler here and you are doing like at exit, you want to do memory dot flush. So what are the flush attribute is there? So you are specifying what is that? When this particular is called, when you are breaking, what level you want to flush, so that you are doing. So if you see, you can see that in that you are getting all the levels and the code. So whenever you want to understand something when broken from something, you can do like this registering. So this is all about this logs. And the last thing, still there are many handlers for your understanding, but just I want to give a code instead of going further is about the SMTP handler. SMTP handler means this log will come into the output, sorry, in the email. So SMTP means simple email, so processing transfer protocol, sorry, simple email transfer protocol. So where you specify the host name, so from address, to address, subject, and all this information. So generally I configure this one. I have used it whenever I have in the automation project. So within the organization, you don't need a credentials. You just use details. It will send an email with an SMTP protocol because it has the organization. So you set a level and all these things. Whenever issue happens, you are doing what? Logging.critical, logging.so-and-so, email logger.so-and-so. So you are emailing that trace back and all this information to that. So I wrote like a dummy code, but you can take your own things. So when you go to any organization, you can use it. And so another example for you is like after this basic logging, still a lot of things are there. I don't want to mess too much for you. So, and like there is one interesting thing about the color logs. Whenever you're creating like a command line tools, this will be very much useful. Command line tools means you want a UI instead of a UI or web UI something. Console based tools if you want to create, this is useful. Generally, this is a VS Code, that's why you don't see. But if you open a Linux system or like a Windows system also, it works perfectly. There is a module called as color log. Using color log, if you create the format and others, where you can specify for each log level what is the color. Each log level, what is the color. So like that if you do, so same coding, everything will be same. Especially it will have importance when you're outputting. When you do to a file handler, it makes no sense, right? Does file store a color? No. So there is no point. But only when you're doing in the console, it will be very much useful. So next to this, like built-in loggers, there is one more thing called a struct logger. Struct log is like very much useful. This is another kind of logging. If I go further into these logs, you will notice that. So there is something called a struct log. So many languages has this struct log. In fact, Python, so Go language is having a struct log a lot. So Python is also having struct log. So this is very famous. Many of the organizations are using it. So what it happens is like the output come in a proper structure. In an ordinary way, you get a log. When there is broken also, it will be like this and all it will be like. But if you want in a proper structure, we can go for the structure logger. So how to do the installation, all the basic documentation you have. So if I want to take these examples in terms of the struct log to understand, apart from the basic examples, if I go to the struct log.message, if I go further, so typical example will be the same in terms of the logging, messages, and everything. But in terms of usage, if you want to do, we need to install it. So pip install struct log. If I install, it will do it. And here, by default, you create a logger object. So that is how they decided. So you give like a message, info, and all these things. And you remember, if you want to do extra context, you did a extra equal to some dictionary, right? But here, not like that. You give directly the variables and the value. Key equal to value, key equal to value like that. You need not worry about other information. It can directly handle the remaining part. As I didn't give any file, the output will be in the console. So if I go with B, so and so, clear, and Python, A so and so. Did you see that the output is entirely coming here? And did you see this output is very different? Did you ever configure about the structure, any format here? No. So this is the default format. Sir, in the first two messages, you didn't give any extra values. You got log like this. But when subsequently you added some things, but you didn't specify within the log format or anything. So whatever the values you pass, it will do. And also you remember, in whatever the format I give, in the same fashion, same order it will come. So whether it is a values, string, or like so tuple or a list, everything it works. So this is called as a typical logger object. Hope by this itself you understood that there are some features which are not there in a standard logging module, which this is having. So if I go one step ahead here, so if I want further more details, I can go here. Quickly, I'm explaining that. If I go for a default logger, I gave the log message, I get the message like this, right? Whereas if I give like message and details, I'm getting like this, that you already saw. Similarly, like an logger, it also have something called as config, like a basic config for us. Structlog also have config. where you should specify the processors. So if you are giving like a key value render processor, now what will happen? So it will render that. So the same message logging whatever you have, it will give like this. Means it will process only the key values. Earlier it gave the date, time, info, all these things, right? Levels. But it will not do, only the key values it will process and it will give. And it is saying what? So if the first one is like a first message, it will say event equal to first message. So here also event equal to second message, event equal to third message, but it is giving these details. If you want like this kind of key value render, you can go. So, but if you want like a JSON render, this is what most of the people will use. If you use like a JSON render, whatever the output of each of the log is there, that will come like a JSON object. So means these messages will pass to the Splunk. So in my production project, it is happening like that. Similarly, log FMT renderer. If I do log FMT renderer, the same content is coming like this. So home and all these things. So similarly, if I give like a exception renderer, means so typically when you have a log and if there is an exception, I told you that we can do logger dot exception if it is a built-in logger. But here for this logger dot error of, you give the entire content. And did you see, apart from these things, you already gave exception information also. Now you see, as I have configured this exception renderer, see here, in this case, I am doing 3 processors. Timestamp processor to get the timestamp. What is that I give? ISO format. Means I didn't give like date, month, on so and so. So everyone know what is the ISO date format. So ISO date format means, so year, month, save, so and so. So you get like this, okay? So year, month, date. So and also hours, minutes, seconds, like that. That is the ISO format. And you give like an exception renderer and JSON renderer. These were the processors, means how to process it. Then in terms of the logging factory, logger factory, any wrapping case if you want, and context how you want, like a dictionary, I can specify. So cache the logs on the first usage, true, such that it will not regenerate again the same logger object. If I do this logic right now, definitely this function will throw an exception, and this is how it will log that information. So it is giving like a dictionary because you gave like a dictionary. And what are the values you gave apart from this x equal to y, y equal to y, like that. So what is the current value of x? What is the current value of y? You got. What is the event? Means the message, logger message, and you gave the timestamp. For timestamp, you didn't give anything format, but you told ISO. This is the standard ISO format. And you got like an exception message because you added here exception renderer. Like that, every renderer will have its importance. Whenever user want, it's like a pick and pack by adding multiple renderers. So exception renderer gave the exception, JSON renderer gave the JSON, like that it is working. Similarly, if you want to work with say config, say if I want to work with the configuration, I can specify these things. See here, I have given like structlog.processor.log level, so JSON renderer. So there are only 2 processors. In the log level, I mentioned all this information. So I get the output. But now with kind of formatting, if you want, I can add further more things. Earlier, I did only JSON renderer and this one. Here, so I gave a format execution information, exception information, sorry, and like timestamp and console renderer I gave. So, and further more details I gave. So like that, you can have more details. I just want to add so that you will understand. So if you want like full configuration of a typical production project, this would be all the logs that you have. See, you have filter by level, add log name, add log level, position argument formatter. So timestamp what you want, stack info renderer, whenever it got, and exception format exception information, Unicode decoder. So all these things you give. So JSON and all these things. So this is like a typical production logic, which I have placed. And similarly, there were other things also to give. but I just want to add only one, and I want to stop this logger custom log struct log is about the capture logs. Generally, when you are working with the testing, so the most important thing is how to capture the logs. When you are testing a particular code which is resulting in a logs and you want to evaluate that, this is very much useful. You see now, typically Structlog has a get logger. You created a get logger dot objects dot bind of something you give. So now if you want to capture that logs, there is something called as capture logs, especially used whenever you're doing unit testing for the same logging. So it will capture that and it will show the output to you. If I say Python G so and so, you get that. So log level sees an info. The default level set is, so so this one, debug. That's the reason the info you are not getting. Sorry, warning. That's why you don't get the info. But you can take that assignment to slightly change that to info and work with it. And one more last thing that just I want to introduce to you is about the loguru. Loguru is another thing which, like, if you take the examples of Bank of America, loguru is most used. Loguru Python. So Bank of America uses it a lot. So loguru, you can see these many people are started. Means it's a very good thing. A lot of documentation is there. How to use this loguru? They will give a brief document. From loguru, import logger, and they give the logger.debug of whatever you have. Did you see by default the format is coming in a proper way? So whatever is the production ready, so it's giving. And if you want to add a log dot so and so format level rotation, I told about the rotations, right? So file rotations and others. You can give like this, it works. And similarly, if you want to write your own custom code within loguru, so I can give the example. Say I am going for, so if I want to set the level in a loguru and do the things, I can do the same things here within the loguru. I can do, but if you need to do pip install loguru. So this is another thing which is also famous. But most of the time you can see either struct log or a basic logging, or nowadays this is also getting famous. If I go here, so see struct log, if I say clear and Python a so and so logging level, I didn't set anything, but did you see this is very interesting? Now you can see the console log. I previously showed about the console logging, right? So colorama is there, color log is there, those modules. They made use of it. So output is also coming in a particular color. So in a structured way, right? So that is what they say that it is very useful for them. So if you take the example, if I say add of std out and like level as debug, for the output, I want to set the level as debug and I gave this ones. And observe carefully, they have added few more levels. Instead of, earlier we have 5 levels, right? They added even trace also. Trace is furthermore less than that, debug. You can see. So error, critical, warning, everything you are getting. So I set the level and I got it, right? So you can see that every log level is coming twice because you have set already. Already it was set to default only, and subsequently you set again. That's the reason the moment you set it as a debug, so from there onwards, everything is coming like a debug only, right? So that's why 2 things you are getting. If I, don't set this one, so then what will happen? You see, the same thing is coming only once, but others are not coming. Did you see the trace? So other levels are not coming. But if I set it, so it is different. So like that, you can go with a particular thing. So, but though you have the set level and so trace levels, so as you place like a debug, you didn't get. But if I place like a trace level, so I should get from the trace onwards. Did you see from the trace onwards I'm getting? So it has like a custom loggers with custom levels and other information. If I take like an ordinary code, which is having all these details, you can notice that. You see, I wrote a code with that, like I wrote some logic, like I have written what is the logger, std error only. filter on warnings or so and so I have given. You can see. So it is saying this is a not a logger. This is not a logger, like that it is saying. So now we understood the taste of this loguru, how it is working. But if I take one small example for you to understand how this works. So typically if I take a log file, so if I want to add any logger or so and so, I need not write a big code. You remember in the standard module, first you need to create a handler. For that handler, you need a set level. Then you need to set the formatting. Then you need to create a logger. For that logger, you need to add all these things. So a lot of job is there, right? Chaotic. So instead of you doing all those things, you can simply use it. So these will make your life more easy. So loguru. And if I take like logging to multiple things. Earlier, you remember, if I want to log to multiple loggers, I wrote like a very big heavy code to make that kind of thing. So instead of that, if I want to log the same thing to two things, say to the file also and to the STD error also. So, and when I'm setting to that, I need to set a level also like this. If you remember the same code, how many lines I have written in the built-in logger. If I go for like multiple loggers, multiple handlers, you remember I wrote this much code just to set this level and use it. So instead of you doing all those things, you can simply do in a lines. So don't you think that it will solve your problem? Logging to multiple. So if you do like this now, what will happen if I say clear and Python C log so and so. Did you see now? It is coming to the output. At the same time, there is another file which is creating log.file, which is also will have the same output. You see? So for the output, you set a level. For this one, you set another level. So if I say C logger, you can see. For the STD out, which is coming, I set the level as error. So that's why from error. So from that level onwards, you are getting. But for others, I set the level other way. So that is how it's working. Next, so yeah. So for the file, you didn't set the level. So that's why the default is like a write mode and you are getting the things. And if I go ahead, yeah, within the logger, within the logging. So if I want to log to the multiples each sync, so I can go that and specify that log level wherever I am. If I say here, so I want to edit it. So rename .py. So if I want to log that to a single source, I have written. If I want to add like multiple, let's say if I go in this example, you see here, I set the level as a file and also std out, and I have written multiple things. Now if I say Python, sorry, clear and Python, so d so and so. So here in the output, it is coming the level. Did you see I set different levels for both the things? So for STD error, I am getting from error onwards. So for all the things. But for the file, I have did from the log this onwards. Like that I have. And similarly, if you want to customize this log format, why I'm telling this much time? Because this is also very much useful. Nowadays, many of the organizations are using it. If you see here, I set the logger.add of a format. If you want that format, I can give like this. If I just give time, it will do ISO format by default. So you need not worry about anything else. And if you want to set the colorize, I can say color equal to true. So that's it. Similar, if you want that format in a specific time format, so I can say time colon and give these things. But if you want default also, it can be. And not only this, on top, if you want the time zone information also, I can specify that. So I can say that TZ is there, right? So timez.info. I'm doing dot bind. Bind means it will convert that to the time zone and work. So object itself will understand that, yes, I am in that Europe, Paris time zone, and it will work like that. And observe carefully in the outputs. As I have written everything to the output, I'm getting everything in the output only, console.output. After setting that level, did you see that it is thinking that it is of the particular time zone? So yeah, you see here, till then it is like plus 000 because of UK time, but subsequently it changed the time zone information. So it didn't think that it is in that UK time zone. It is thinking that it is in the different time zone. So like that, we can specify that. And not only that, the last point I want to bring within the logs is we can add some kind of context information. If you want to add the context information, you can add it. So extra information, whichever you have. So you can bind that things here. Whatever the content or the context you want for all the logs, you can do with a bind. So other things you can do directly. And similarly, if you have an exception, you can specify that exception here. So whenever you do log.exception, instead of doing like in a built-in logger, sorry, this logger, you do logger.exception. So whatever is there, it will do it. So in a much better way with the context along with that. So context also you have like an extra, the same like the built-in one you have used. Now if I say Python G so and so, did you see the logger is coming in a beautiful way? The entire trace and everything you are seeing, right? So this is all about loggers. Still, I can add a lot of things like rotation handler, custom handler, and all these things. So it is very interesting. But you remember, I think I will stop here with this custom logger with the rotating handler. In rotating handler, when you have created with a basic logging, you did a lot of struggle to do it. But here, that much is not needed. If you want to create like a custom logger, see here what I did. I did like a rotating handler. So logging rotating handler of file name, maximum size, backup count. I did like the add handler and I did the logging dot so and so. Now if you see, if I clear and print, so J so and so, it will create only one module. Okay. Handlers were changed now. I think like this code was changed now. They changed the logging handlers to some other place. So I assume that this is a problem. I don't know. So you need to how to solve. When a production issue happened, you just Google it. So we will get what are the issues that other people also faced. It is saying that everyone is saying that so the no module named loguru or something else. If you scroll all the way, they will say what is the solution. They say that maybe some feature was changed or it was changed. So what is the exact solution? Could not reproduce or whatever it is saying. So but our issue is not like this, right? Our issue is different. So no module named loguru.handlers. So loguru handlers is not there. So is anyone getting that kind of error? You see, if you don't know, it's simple. So maybe that functionality was changed. You can go for the Python or IPython, or like even there also, you can say like import loguru, and within that you do a loguru dir. You can see that the handlers was changed. You see how to change that handlers and how to use. So this handler is no more coming directly, but indirectly, dot handlers. So let me check that whether it works like this. If I do like this, it throws an error that, hey, cannot you import loguru? It is not there anymore. So you can go to this documentation and check for this and say, so everyone will have a documentation. They will have their own page. This is like this one, but they will have the features and outputs. If I go back, you see the documentation of loguru. So there you can identify and you can search for this rotating file handler. For the rotating file handler, so they will give some outputs. You can just walk through that. So quickly, lastly, coming back, there is one more thing called a Sentry. You can take this as an assignment where you can simply sign in and you can create this one with a Gmail or so and so you can do. It is freely you can do. So you can set your log level. So for like your production projects, whenever you have any production project, you can use this one to set your level and you can add any things that you want. Say if I give some example for this Sentry. So what I do is like, let's say a simple production example I'm giving in Sentry. It is also typically like a logger, but you do the customization. So what it actually happens is that, say I have some code, I want to send these logs. Instead of storing it locally, I will send to a remote tool. Sentry is one such tool. So what it has its module called as Sentry SDK. We need to install. And whatever the typical logging integrations you do, for that init SDK, you need to give the DSN. It is like something unique for you. Once you register into that thing, you will get it. If I say like integrations, I will get it. Sentry integrations. If I like trace rates, at what interval you want to do. And you see here, instead of an ordinary login, you did like a capture exceptions. So if I go for this one, so with respect to my Gmail, so I can just walk through that and see. So I already have this one. So if I just do, I'll get to it. And if I create like a new organization for the first time, you can specify all your details. No, I don't prefer to do it. If I say some X company, so something I do, and I do these details, and it can create a new organization for me. It is saying like it is already there. So you can just log in it. So what I will do a sign in with this particular thing. So I try to get to it. But this is how it actually does. So if you see here, I already have that account. And if you see your issues and your projects. So every time when you are working, for the first time, you need to create a project. So if I create a project, at that time it will asking what project you want. So if I want to, with Python, I can specify that. Within Python also it is saying which one you want to do. Is it like a Django project or a Flask or Falcon or something, or a typical Python application only? So if I say Python application, I can select that. And if it is there multiple, I can do that. But if it is a Python application, I can select and alert me on every new issue. Means all logs will go to the Sentry instead of to a file or somewhere. But how often you want to notify? If there is any abnormality, only then you want to notify. All those custom rules you can write. So, so when there is, let's say for every new issue, I want to get notified. I have created like this. I created a project, and if I do like this, so it is asking, do we want a framework? So you can skip it. I don't want any framework at this moment. But subsequently, when I create a Django project or else, it will work. It is saying that this is your thing. You can use this SDK. So in our project, I told that this is mine, right? I can do. So if I do now, earlier it is my thing. So now I placed it. So the remaining details will be almost same. So when you are working, you can place this entire code. I have written some basic exceptions and all this information. You can use it. So if I say clear the screen, if I go further, CD, so and so, if I go for the D Sentry, if I say clear and Python A example. So it is saying that I don't have Sentry. So pip install Sentry. So mostly it is saying like what? Could not match the version that satisfies you. So you need to specify the exact version. So if you go here also, they will specify what is that you need to install. Sentry SDK it's saying. So that module I need to do. So if I say clear and I do. So pip install -u or -upgrade Sentry SDK. It has installed that. Now it is clear for me. And now I can run my code. So example. So whatever I'm doing, all the logs are generating, right? These logs are going there into this. So now if you see, take me to my issues. Whenever issues are generated, just now these issues are generated 9 seconds ago. Whatever is the log, whatever is the issue, you can see every log, every trace very detailedly. So I can see that, and I can see what is the environment, production, and all these things. I can set a level and do some actions. So like that, this is one kind of log aggregating tool, Sentry. But there are other tools like, say like Splunk. Splunk is another good tool. If you have, there will be free trials also there. You can just go and check for the free trials. So a free trial, you can same like what I did. You can create an account, cloud platform. So you will get till 14 days. You can create an account and try. There is one more thing called as Sumologic. Sumologic is another kind of tool for the same thing, for the logging itself. So you can specify all the details. You can also create an account and do. The beauty of Splunk and Sumologic are that they can give patterns. Means you can do regular expressions for custom patterns. And on top of that, there is another thing called as Kinbana. Kibana logging. So Kibana, what it comes is like, it comes with something called as the elk stack. So elk means like Elasticsearch, so logging and Kibana and all these things together. For this also, how to use. You can set up this locally, or you can do with this. Or subsequently, if you learn more, within your container environment, you can have separate containers for Kibana and all these services running, and you can work. So these are the various logging tools that you want to learn.